Thank you very much. On to you, Dr. Vinod.
Yeah. Should I share my screen? Am I audible?
Yes,
yes, very clear.
Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay. Okay. So I agree with Dr. Reddy to a certain extent. Life has changed for retina people with the invent of Octa, because now they have to worry about one more gadget. Okay, so I'll be defending my point that I can live without Octa. Now, since its first introduction in 2012 by Jia et al. To visualize retinal vasculature, there have been whopping 8,000 publications on PubMed since that time. That means roughly 2 to 3 publications every day, and people believe that it is a disruptive technology. Now let's look how Octa has changed our understanding of the ophthalmology. So most common disorder is diabetic retinopathy. I'll talk about it first. We know that microaneurysms are the earliest sign of the diabetic retinopathy, and unfortunately Octa only shows half of these. People have described that neovascularization can be seen protruding into the vitreous, but we know from our knowledge that neovascularization does grow into the vitreous, and that's how we distinguish it from the IRMAs, and that's why we have named them IRMAs, because they are intraretinal. Octa has shown certain other things like deep capillary plex is affected first in diabetic retinopathy, and that FAZ size increases with increasing diabetic retinopathy. These are the things we already know from the histological studies and FA studies dating back to 1980s. And none of these actually alter our management in the current scenario. Coming to practical part, it is said to help in the easier detection of neovascularization. But since many occur in the periphery and limited view of the Octa is a major deterrent to this. One should not forget that neovascularization is a clinical diagnosis, and simple red-free photographs on our fundus cameras can easily augment our diagnosis. People say that FAZ can be easily seen on Octa, but we should not compare 3 to 5 degrees Octa pictures with 50-degree FA pictures, as horses cannot be compared with elephants. Coming to non-neovascular AMD, that is dry AMD, Octa has shown that there is trend to decreasing choriocapillaris density with increasing AMD severity, a fact we already know from studies as early as 2002. Dr. Reddy also highlighted that we can see non-exudative neovascular membranes in patients with dry AMD. But again, we knew that these membranes, these asymptomatic type CNVMs do exist, and we had the ICG evidence of these in studies as early as 1998. Especially evaluation of the structure beneath the RP on Octa is confounded by the shadowing from the RP and the structures overlying. There are several attenuation and projection artifacts, and every Octa talk, session would have a large amount dedicated to artifacts we talk about. This is because it is not easy to interpret Octa findings, especially when we are talking about the sub-RP space. Perhaps the most immediate clinical applicability of Octa is in neovascular AMD. It is said to help in diagnosis, but remember, Octa could detect only 2/3 of the CNVs in a recent randomized control trials. We can see the feeder vessels in almost all type 1, type 2 CNVMs with the help of Octa. But again, we have it does not help us in our management, and we already know this fact by the histology studies. We know that there is a good drop of choriocapillaris surrounding the CNVM, well shown by Octa, but again a previously known fact. So you see, most of the findings which have been revealed in the literature are already known, and biggest challenge remain the artifacts which are related to projection artifacts, and atrophy in the AMD eyes further complicate the issues. Much effort is being put into whether Octa can differentiate between active and inactive CNVM, and we all know that currently Octa cannot be used to define our retreatment criteria, and there's no consensus in the literature as to what happens to the CNVM size after treatment. Octa is said to enhance the diagnosis or aid in the diagnosis of CNVM in a variety of disorders. Just an example here, this middle-aged female who presented with decrease of vision had an obvious CNVM on the Octa. But you see the FA, there is no leakage. OCT shows no fluid. And of course, this patient, if you go by the history, last injection was 6 months back and there are no visual complaints. So Octa will show you a whole lot of membranes which actually do not need any treatment. Again, a 60-year-old male with CSC, you see the 5 flat irregular PED, Pecchi vessels. We know that nothing is to be done to this patient, but again, Octa will pick up a membrane and will not know what to do about this membrane in our follow-up. So lastly, this is from editor of Ophthalmology Retina. I sent a paper and see what a reviewer has written. Octa imaging is not very useful in making the diagnosis or response to treatment, etc. Just an exercise to perform the Octa imaging. So Octa seems to be a promising tool, but we have still a long way to go where we need to enlarge the field along with the resolution, and we have to take care of the artifacts. There is limited clinical usage in current scenario, so I can eat, drink, and sleep without Octa without putting further financial burden on my patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vinod. That was a wonderful rebuttal. So let's hear from our moderator, Dr. Shobhit.
Well,
Dr. Shobhit?
they've both done a wonderful job.
Yeah.
And only Raja Rami did not show lesions. And Vinod has highlighted that also. For me, till I did not have it, it was not necessary. Today, it is an added tool. It's not free of artifact. Though it has come of age, it has improved. Angioplex, the newer versions have been a great improvement on the older ones. But I tend to believe that one can live without it. Definitely. It is not a must, but it's a lovely tool to have. There I agree with Raja Rami, especially the cases of choroiditis, which he showed, and serpiginous. My uveitis specialist loves to follow up these cases and saves the trouble of ICG in these. So that's my word on this.
Thank you very much. Dr. Srinivas, I think we'll go on to our next debate. Srinivas, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm really sorry. Thank you very much. I think it was a very nice debate between the two. And thank you, Dr. Vinod and Dr. Raja Rami Reddy for excellently showing their set of cases. So let's move on to our next team is led by Dr. Ashraya Nayak, a very young dynamic retina consultant from Eye Foundation Group of Hospitals, Coimbatore. He'll be speaking on multiple newer acronyms in imaging, creating a lot of confusion in today's clinical practice, especially for the vitreoretinal surgeons or the vitreoretinal specialists. So he would be most effectively argued by another young dynamic leading VR surgeon from AB Eye Hospital, Patna, Dr. Pooja Madam, who will be arguing against him. Over to Dr. Ashraya, please.
We could ask Dr. Anand to moderate this debate.
Yeah, Dr. Anand sir will be moderating this debate.
Sure.
Dr. Ashraya, you can share your screen.
Yeah. Sir, are my slides visible?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Good evening, one and all. I thank Dr. Chitra ma'am and ARC for giving me the opportunity. I thank Srinivas sir for giving me the hottest topic of this debate, and I will be talking on multiple newer acronyms in imaging, which are creating confusion in clinical practice. Acronyms are very fascinating and can look intellectually exciting to use in our daily practice, but when they become too many, they play their own part in causing confusion in the management of the condition. The dictionary meaning of confusion is a lack of clearness or distinctness. When acronyms becomes too many, they can be confusing. So newer acronyms can be confusing if they are overlapping, or if one is the corollary of the other, or if it's recurrent. So let's look at the evidence for each of them. So Govetto et al. In 2017 published two entities, central bokeh abnormalities and ectopic inner foveal layers. The simplified model explains the pathophysiology of these entities when the total force F is exerted by the epiretinal membrane onto all the layers of the retina. The stage 3 and stage 4 ERMs have overlapping features. And it's obvious because they are the consequences of the same pathophysiology. And hence both are overlapping, which leads to confusion. This confusion ends with this paper published by Alkebes et al. In 2020, in which it demonstrates EFL to be a better indicator for metamorphopsia in ERMs, making CBA redundant.